It's Wednesday, the 26th of July, 2023. Welcome to the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, 5 stories, 5 minutes. Let's get going. Story number 1, the corporate watchdog has accused fund management giant Vanguard of misleading investors in its $1 billion plus ethical bond product about the sustainability of its assets.
It's the second major greenwashing case undertaken by the Australian Securities and Investments Commission this year and alleges Vanguard didn't screen out certain investments by the bond fund against ESG criteria as promised. Basically, ASIC claims that Vanguard said this particular fund wouldn't invest in things including fossil fuels, but it actually did invest in activities linked to oil and gas exploration. ASIC claims that Vanguard failed to do its due diligence to screen companies out and misled consumers in its product disclosure statements, even issuing a media release on it. In a statement, Vanguard said it had self-identified and self-reported one breach. ASIC then further investigated. Vanguard said it's updated its disclosure documents for the fund and hired a head of ESG product.
Sean, we're hearing plenty about greenwashing, so basically kind of investments that claim to be green but in reality aren't. I'm guessing this allegation against one of the world's biggest funds is probably going to scare a few money managers around the place.
I'd say so. Plenty of superannuation and managed funds rely on green screening to ensure investment portfolios are ethical. That's what Vanguard has done. But sometimes getting to the underlying asset of a bond portfolio is actually quite difficult. Both ASIC and the ACCC have pledged to crack down on greenwashing, and in March, the corporate regulator launched action against retail super fund Mercer, another global giant. It's warned that it is investigating several super funds that may end up in court action. ASIC Deputy Chair Sarah Court said that the tougher scrutiny was needed as investors increasingly look for products that exclude certain industries on ethical grounds.
Sean, story number 2, a couple of staple soft commodities, think kind of wheat and rice, are experiencing big increases in price. What's going on?
Yeah, well, this will probably feed through to what we're paying at supermarkets. Wheat futures hit their highest level in 5 months after Russia attacked a port on the Danube River in Ukraine on Monday. That destroyed a grain hangar, basically escalated concerns about Ukrainian grain reaching world markets. Of course, Ukraine, one of the world's biggest grain producers and grain exporters. In rice markets, prices are set to surge after the top exporter, which is India, banned shipments on non-basmati white rice. Basically, it's about keeping domestic prices lower. That's what the Indian government is trying to do. Rice, of course, is vital to diets of billions of people, particularly in Asia and Africa. So what you're finding is 2 staple commodities, wheat and rice, prices going up, not what we need when many of us are suffering through a cost of living crisis.
Yeah, that's right. Now, story number 3, Sean, the Australian Electoral Commission says a record number of Australians are enrolled to vote ahead of the upcoming referendum on the Indigenous voice to Parliament. That's got to be good news.
Yeah, I think so. Around 97.5% of eligible Australians are enrolled to vote, with a sharp rise in the number of Indigenous Australians enrolled. Enrolments for Indigenous Australians and Northern Territorians are above 90% for the first time ever, and there are 60,000 more Indigenous Australians enrolled than there were at the end of last year. It means the referendum will have the largest baseline for democratic participation ever, bigger than any previous federal election. Mind you, Australian Electoral Commissioner Tom Rogers did note that higher enrolment doesn't necessarily mean higher turnout, but let's hope that's not the case.
Sean, story number 4, ahead of a float on the ASX, possibly later this year, workers at Virgin Australia have upped their campaign for better conditions and they want to be allotted shares in any IPO.
The Transport Workers Union submitted to Virgin's owners, Bain Capital, Virgin Group and QIC, a list of 5 demands, including the award of $1,000 worth of stock to each of the company's 7,000 staff as part of an employee share scheme. TWU National Secretary Michael Caine said workers deserve a slice of the business, given the private equity owners stood to gain hundreds of millions of dollars from an IPO. Virgin Australia pilots, cabin crew and ground workers are also calling for Bain to prioritise rewarding workers and for them to address workplace issues that have caused stress, fatigue and high turnover.
Okay, last one. Story number 5. Joggers have snapped up the first batch of Yeezy shoes sold by Adidas since the end of its ill-fated partnership with Kanye West, cutting the risk that the group will have to take a big write-down on its remaining stock.
Adidas stopped selling Yeezy sneakers in October after ending its highly profitable agreement with fashion designer and rapper Kanye West, now known as Ye, after he made anti-Semitic remarks. Now, in May, the company announced it had decided to sell some of its outstanding Yeezy inventory because destroying it would force the company to write off another 500 million euros, according to Financial Times. Adidas has said it will donate a significant portion of the proceeds to charities that combat racism and anti-Semitism. Demand at the first online sale of Yeezy shoes, which was spread over the end of May, start of June, exceeded expectations. By June 2, towards the end of the sale, Adidas had received orders worth more than 508 million euros for 4 million pairs of trainers.
That is quite extraordinary.
Huge numbers.
All right, there we go. The top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Wednesday, the 26th of July, 2023. Remember to hit follow on the podcast. And if 5 minutes isn't enough, you can find our longer daily show called Fear and Greed, wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget as well, every Wednesday we put out another podcast called How Do They Afford That? All about making your money work a little bit harder for you. Today's episode is basically an introduction to investing in commercial property. You can find that wherever you listen to podcasts, and we'll also put a link in today's show notes. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed. Have a great day.